Hi, everybody, and thanks for attending the Weekly Performance Report meeting. This is a WebEx that we're putting together to talk about the Weekly Performance Report, and it's being recorded so we can put this into our online training system to be viewed in the future. Today's meeting, we're going to discuss how the weekly report was developed, discuss what it measures, discuss the steps needed to complete it, and discuss future additions to improve the tool. This tool was put together by the Shared Workload Accountability Team. The sponsor was Sean Hartline, and the project manager was Brett Pitchner, and the lead was Lori Walker. And the team had members from each of the regions, and they're listed here on the slide. The group had a number of expected outcomes, and these were to identify success measures for shared workload model, develop a performance planning tool, plan and schedule for operations review of shared workload model, and develop GMAP measures. Today's meeting, we are focusing on the weekly performance report. To give you a little bit of background on the report and how we developed it, the group reviewed all the reports being used for performance reporting within each region and the customer service center. We looked at the reports and found consistencies and similarities, and then we also discussed future needs with the shared workload model and things that we liked and would like to include in our performance reports. And then we distilled all of that data into one form. We wanted to include reporting at all levels. That includes individual reporting, unit reporting, office level, region level, and CSD-wide level reports. And the report traits that we really would like to have or wanted to have in our report was to have it automated, to keep track of time utilization, and like the scorecard does currently. We wanted to keep track of production or the quantity of work, as well as quality or the accuracy of work. As we worked on developing this tool, we knew that we had to implement it as shared workload rolls out, and shared workload rolls out on August 17th or July 17th. We knew that automation wasn't going to be available in the short amount of time needed to put this together, so we developed a manual tool. Automation will be developed in the near future. We also realized that the Audit Plus is the audit tool for the future, and the reports are not quite available, and that program is being rolled out in the summer of 2013. So as soon as everybody is utilizing that program for audits and the reports are available, we'll include those reports into the weekly performance report as well. So what we have currently in the weekly reporting tool is 3 areas of reporting. We have time utilization, we have the number of actions per hour by queue for all of the shared workload queues, and we're also looking at completion rate. The weekly report is going to be completed weekly by the supervisors, and there will be a consolidation process for all the desired roll-ups for the units and for the offices and for the regions and for all of CSD. It only requires 4 reports to complete and provides all the desired data that the team wanted to have in the weekly reports. The 4 reports that will be utilized by the supervisors to complete the weekly tool are leave tracker data, the CMS, which is a call management system, historical split skill weekly report, and this is only used for our navigator team. The rest of the report is completed with barcode reports. The first one is a barcode queue output report and a field office reports, and we're using the queue output report with pool and the simple count, and that's run for each worker, and we'll show you how to go through that here in just a few minutes. The other report that is utilized is the barcode ad hoc report titled Q Total Touch Time Minutes, and it's got the CSD suffix at the end. And this only needs to be run once because it includes all of your staff, which simplifies running the report. Now, as we look at the report, it will take about an hour to complete for the first time, as we get used to running the reports. Again, the future adaptations of the report will include quality inputs from Audit Plus reports, and in the very near future will also include conditional formatting. So the roll-up pages and the summary pages will include expected ranges for each of these areas. So we fully expect to put that into the process as soon as the shared workload process is stabilized and we have good statistical data to do so. So we're going to pull up the report, and the report looks like this. It looks like there's a lot of information to complete here, but it really is pretty straightforward. We have it spelled out as a form, so you only input the areas that you need to input data. And I'm going to take you through completing this for a real live worker and show you the different reports to do that. But let me go through the report first. The first thing that you'll notice in the upper left-hand corner, I'll zoom in so we can see this on our WebEx, is this is a weekly report, and this data is for the Sunday leading up to, or this date is the Sunday leading up to the work we're going to report. For example, I'm going to report for the week of 7/7. The next tab, you're going to put in your worker first name and the worker last name, the region that the worker belongs to, and the office number that the worker belongs to, as well as the first name of the supervisor and the last name of the supervisor. When we look at the next data inputs, this is where Leave Tracker comes in. Leave Tracker will show you the amount of hours of leave used by the worker, and you will have to go in and manually count that for each of the workers. When I went and looked at Minnie Mouse's Leave Tracker, I saw that Minnie Mouse had 8 hours of leave used, and this is any kind of leave where Minnie Mouse is not working. So annual leave, sick leave, personal holidays, or leave without pay would all be included in this section. And Minnie Mouse had 8 hours of leave used during this week. One thing that each of these little red triangles indicates that there is some data, a comment box that explains these boxes as well. You'll notice that this one says hours of leave used from Leave Tracker, and that's all leave captured that goes here. We want to make sure when we use our hours, 2 hours and 12 minutes would be 2.2. So we're using tenths of hours just like we would in Leave Tracker. For scheduled hours, we are making sure that we're backing out scheduled breaks for each worker. So Minnie Mouse works 40 hours. She works the standard 8 to 5 schedule. So her hours that she worked for the week, or scheduled to work, was 37.5. Now these are important to keep track of because I'm going to scroll over here in the upper right-hand corner. A lot of our data is based on how many hours that the worker had available to be working. The first one is the completion rate. And you'll notice we also have work time utilization. And accuracy here, accuracy is grayed out, is darkened out. Again, this will be added once we have Audit Plus and the reports available. The work time utilization captures how many cases we completed and how much time we spent completing those cases compared to the amount of time that we had scheduled. And we know right off the bat that we're not going to have 100% work time utilization because we're not capturing meeting times and training times and those types of things. In our initial test of this tool, we realized that manually tracking those things was very time. It took a lot of time to complete. and it wasn't as accurate as the rest of our data, which is very quantitative. So we decided to roll out the tool without keeping track of those miscellaneous work hours, knowing that the work time utilization isn't going to be 100%. The completion rate in the upper right-hand corner is the amount of cases completed versus the amount of cases pended. And we keep track of that using the exit states 1 and 2 in our queues. And this is similar to the overtime data that we're using currently of keeping track of how many cases are completed versus pending. As we scroll back over to the left, you'll notice that those sections are grayed out as well. These are all calculations. The form does all the calculations for us. We only have data inputs in the blank or the white cell. We have 5 areas that we're keeping track of. I guess 6 areas that we're keeping track of. The first is for phone navigation, and the only phone process that we're keeping track of through CMS is the navigators. The rest of the phone process, as well as the office processes, are going to be in one of a number of queues: the green queue, the red queue, blue queue, and the gray queue. And all of the work is being routed through barcode in these, both in the office and on the phones. So we're able to utilize the queue reports to keep track of the data here. There are 2 additional areas that fall outside of one of the colored queues. The first one is a very specialized activity where we're screening activities in the SCN pool, and that is going to be spelled out here. And all of the other work that we're completing outside of the access queues or the color queues, primarily the WPT missions, will be captured using a report and some back-end calculations here. When we look at all DMS queue work, we'll actually remove from that number all of the red, green, and blue, and gray, and blended activities workload to give us the amount of work completed in queues, in the WPT queue specifically. So that's a brief overview, and I want to take you through completing the rest of this form and the reports to use. The first one is our Avaya report, and this is our CMS report. If you do not have phone staff or navigator phone staff, you won't be utilizing this report. The report we're using is a historical report, and it's a split skill report, and we are going to use report weekly. And we're going to use the split skill as the yellow or the navigator queue. Unfortunately, during the week that we are looking at this, we didn't have a navigator queue, so I'm going to run some data for another queue just to give you an example of what the data is going to look like. In this case, I'm going to use the triage queue because that is one queue that we had up and running. And for the week of 7/7. And what this gives us is for that split skill, it will give you all of the workers and the number of phone calls and the amount of time that they spent logged into this queue. I am going to utilize a worker if I can find the worker that did navigator phones or triage phones in this case, as well as some work in the queue. I'm going to choose SC3 Updike, and in this case, she answered 84 phone calls during this week, and so I'm going to transfer this data over to the total number of ACD calls, and that's 84. And the other data input that I need here is the amount of time logged into the queue. This is their total staff time. This is 25 hours, 48 minutes, and 0 seconds. And I'm going to put it in input that data exactly like it's spelled out in the CMS report. Notice our call-up box also says hours, minutes, and seconds. Notice as soon as I input that, we're showing the calculation of 3.26 phone calls per hour for this time frame. So it will calculate as we go along. The next report that we need to run is that barcode field office report. So I'm going to show barcode here. I'm going to field office reports. And the report I'm going to choose is the queue output with pool. And I need to choose the Monday through Friday for the week. And I'm going to run it as a count and a simple count. And I'm going to highlight the same worker. I'm not picking on this worker. I just know that she has work in multiple queues. And this is the report that shows up. Well, notice as I run this report for this week, we don't have the naming conventions for our shared workload pools. If I ran this on the 17th or for the week of the 17th or after, the ER pool, it won't be the ER pool any longer. It will be the BLU pool, which will be our focus for the blue pool. The map pool will be GRN, which is the green pool, or the green queue that we're going to be pulling. And the @ver is likely going to be the @gray, at GRA. So we want to match these sections with these queue sections. So I would put the GRN queue data on this report into this section here. The reason we have multiple sections is it's possible that a worker could work in multiple office pools or queues and have multiple data entry points. For the most part, we'll have one, but it is possible to have multiple, so we wanted to make sure we had that capability from the get-go. I'm going to use this as the green queue, so I'm going to copy this data over. We had, notice the columns match up perfectly. We have the count all, average all, count 1 and 2, and average 1 and 2. So I'm going to put in the count all for here is 1. The average all is 13.03, and that's minutes for those of us keeping track. This is 1 and 13.03 as well. This report used to show 3s and 4s. It doesn't show 3s and 4s any longer, which is okay because we're really focusing on case completions and exit states 1s and 2s. I'm going to scroll down in my weekly report and move on to the red queue. In this case, I have no red queue, so I would leave these areas blank. I'm going to move down to the blue queue now, and in this situation, again, I don't have a blue queue listed, but in the future, this would be a blue, so I'm going to use that and use the same process right across the board. Count all is 3. The average all is 13.36. Our count 1s and 2 is 3. And our average 1s and 2s, 13.36 as well. I'd like to point out as we go through this, we're also calculating actions per hour in these queues. So we're showing a 4.6 actions per hour in the green queue, 4.49 actions per hour in the blue queue. I'm going to use this item as our gray queue for our example. Again, in the future, this report will say @GRA. And again, right across the board, we've got 1 and a 1.5. and a 1, and a 1.5. And that gives us actions per hour in the gray queue at 40. You'll notice a lot of times with just one action, especially a quick action, we're going to show really high numbers. This is one of the reasons why we wanted multiple measures on this report and not just the strict actions per hour. We wanted to also look at time utilization as well as accuracy. And, of course, our completion rate, which I'll show you here in just a few minutes. One is finally calculated. I'm going to go back to barcode, and again, we would have to run this report, our field office reports, queue output with pool, for each of our workers, or if you would like, you could actually select multiple workers. And the next report that we wanted to run is an ad hoc report. And ad hoc reports are a little more tricky, but this report only needs to be run once, and I'll show you why. The first screen to go into when running an ad hoc report is right into your output menu option, and you click on ad hoc reports. And the search filter you want to use in this case is total touch. When you search for total touch, it only comes up with this one report, and we want to retrieve it. And there's only 3 data entry points. The first one is the begin date, and this is our Monday. And our end date is our Friday. And I'm going to run a region report, and I'm running region 7 because the worker that I'm reporting on belongs to region 7. And I do output this to Excel, and it will take just a few seconds to run. Again, this is real time. I didn't have this planned ahead just to show you the entire process. And it's transferring files over to Excel, and I will show you this report here in just a second. Move the report over, and notice this gives us our total touch time for all queues for all of the workers in the region. I'm going to find the worker here, and in this case, I'm going to just copy this whole section, and notice all of your workers that worked in the queue would be listed. So I would just move this off to your second screen and use it as you go through and complete this for all of your workers in your unit. Now I did copy that row for the worker, and I'm just going to move over and paste it here. And what that does is take all of the queue work and subtract it from all of the color queue work and the screening activities, and it subtracts it from all of the queue data. In this situation, this worker did not work any of the WPT cases, and so we're actually showing 0 for all of their DMS work, which is perfectly okay because this worker just didn't process any WPT batch this week. If there was WPT batch processed by this worker, these numbers would be positive. If we end up with a negative number, go ahead and double check the report, because this should never be a negative number. So what that does, and in this case, again, when we ran our field office reports, this worker did not have any at SCN pool activity, so we left that blank. In the future, we also have our accuracy reports down at the bottom. We're not running our Audit Plus reports at this time, so we're going to leave that blank. We move up to our upper right-hand corner, and we'll notice that this worker's data is now being calculated. Our completion rate for this worker had a 100% completion rate for this week on the cases that they worked in the queue. She worked 5 cases, and all 5 cases were completed. And we'll notice that the work time utilization is a 91%. The completion rates, again, are all cases exited with 1 and 2 divided by the total cases accessed in the queue. And our work time utilization is all cases, the total time dedicated to cases in 1 and 2, as well as the navigator queue, divided by the total time available. And the total time available is, again, the scheduled time minus the leave time. So, and those calculations are also spelled out in our edit boxes. So that's what it takes to complete this form per worker, and we need to do that for each of our workers. And I've gone ahead and filled in a few more as we go through our different staff tabs. When you get your report, you can change the staff name by right-clicking on the staff number and click rename, and you can put in, for example, Minnie Mouse to help you keep track of the data. These tabs aren't considered in any of the roll-up data. They're just for your identification and ease of navigating through this process. At the end of our weekly report, we have a unit summary report. And this unit summary will take all of the data and combines it for us. And for the supervisor, Jason, in this situation, he had 150 hours scheduled, and the total hours of leave used by this unit is 14. We have, as we go through and the data is carried over the sheets, there's a work time utilization of 73% for this unit, and the completion rate is 100%. Jason's unit's average calls per hour is 3.38. The green queue is 4.6 cases per hour or actions per hour. He did not have any red queue workers. In the blue queue, we had 4.49 cases per hour, and in the gray queue, we had an average of 40 actions per hour. And no screening activities, and in this situation, we had just a few other cases that were worked in DMS queue for 4.6 cases per hour in the WPT queues. And that is our unit summary. The next step to this is the unit wrap-up, and this looks really daunting, but this is used for the databases and will be used in the future. And what this will also do for us is it keeps track of all of this as a unit, and this is where our conditional formatting will be shown. For example, as I look through this under work time utilization, I notice that I have 2 workers in the 70s, I have 1 worker in the 90s, and then I have 1 worker at 55%. That worker happens to be Scrooge McDuck. And as a supervisor, I would look through these and look for those outliers and have dialogue. I happen to know that during this week, Scrooge had some training, so I know that his work time utilization is going to be lower. But this is a tool that we are able to use to help keep track of those things as well. We also have some comparisons for our case actions per hour in our navigation and in our other queues as well. Again, this is all the data that will be utilized for roll-ups as well as the conditional formatting coming in the future. So we've got multiple views. We've got for the detailed and data-driven folks out there, we've got this view. We also have a unit summary to help us keep track of our unit as a whole, and then we have each worker identified on their own sheet as well, which we can actually use to share this information with our workers. So in a nutshell, that is our weekly report. The reports that we utilize to input the data for the reports, as well as some background on how this report came about. We'll be including this in an online training in the near future, as well as some classroom training for those of us who would like to have more hands-on completing this form. And we also have a desk aid that will be going out to help as well. And know that in the near future, we will have, hopefully have this process automated, and we'll have a performance tool that everybody in the state is using to help keep track of performance on all of the levels, individual, unit, office-wide, region-wide, and for all of CSD. Thanks, and have a good day.